Good evening. Welcome in daily UPSC editorial audio program. A judgment call. Times of India. Death protest too much about protest. The Economic Times. Status quo in Turkey. The Hindu. A parliamentary democracy or an executive democracy. Now the full editorial. It's a judgment call. The Times of India. Uh, Ugandan law and Japanese court judgments show why only Supreme Court can greenlight same-sex marriage. The Ugandan government passed a new dropping anti-LGBTQ law, while a Japanese court rejected the country's ban on same-sex marriage as unconstitutional. Proof again that courts have the crucial responsibility to defend these rights, especially in the face of political resistance. Social stigma and community prejudice are often mirrored in legislatures. The legislatures are unlikely to take leap of empathy beyond what the majority of their constituents wants: equal dignity and freedom. Freedom, though, are a constitutional promise to each citizen. That's why conferring equal rights to minorities should be the court's domain. Uganda's new law is a standout example of anti-LGBTQ bigotry, even in a contingent largely hostile to their rights. It imposes life imprisonment for anyone who has been in a consensual same-sex sexual encounter, and the death penalty for aggravated homosexuality, by which it means sexual contact with children and other vulnerable groups, as though they are all shades of the same thing. This law is a drastic violation of human rights. It makes ordinary loving and living impossible for LGBTQ persons. Until 5 years ago, India was also among the former British colonies that used the law to harass, humiliate, and deny consenting LGBTQ adults their rights. In 2018, Section 377 was read down, affirming the right to equality and non-discrimination, and the Puttaswamy judgment entrenched privacy as a part of every citizen's life and liberty, which means that the state cannot encroach into the individual domain, which includes consensual domestic and sexual arrangements. The right to same-sex marriage being heard by the Supreme Court should flow of these judgments. The right to love and marry have the protection and responsibilities of the family cannot be denied by the state to any adult citizen, and only the courts can make this happen. The economic doth protest too much about protest. The Economic Times. Article 19(1)(b) of the Constitution provides all citizens the right to assemble peacefully without arms. It also provides restrictions that are sensible and obligatory in the welfare of the sovereignty and integrity of India, the security of the state, friendly relations with foreign states, public order, decency or morals, or in relation to the disdain of court offense or incitement to an offense. In other words, in the first half of the law provides the letter, the second half provides the spirit. For the latter to comply with the former, one needs to obtain a no objection certificate (NOC) from the police station within the jurisdiction of which one plans the public gathering of protest. Indeed, it is the decision, mergy, which, if you will, of the authorities to allow or revoke gatherings of this nature by invoking sections 144 of the Criminal Procedure Code, CRPC curfew. Going by this letter of law, gatherings per se can indeed cause annoyance to any person and be the source of disturbance of public tranquility. By this reading, protest, even in a democratic space, are up for subjective hyper scrutiny and cherry picking. In other words, every protest can be deemed unlawful if the authorities choose to see it as being so. By their very nature, peaceful protests are disruptive, anti-status quoist. For the alliance of such a democratic right to have any practical meaning, it would be wise to be more specific and detailed in law to define what amounts to annoyance and disturbance of public tranquility. All protests don't take place in Tiananmen Square, and they certainly don't amount to challenge the welfare of the sovereignty and integrity of India, the security of the state. Status quo in Turkey, the Hindu. Erdogan must right the wrongs of the past and offer a new inclusive beginning. When recapped, Tayyip Erdogan Justice and Development Party (AKP) came to power in 2002, riding widespread resentment against the establishment amid economic woes. He was a political outsider and Islamist in a system dominated by Kemalist secularists. 20 years later, Mr. Erdogan is the establishment, the military traditionally. The guardian of the old order is under his thumb. Institutions are at his command, and the AKP, with close link to the ulema, remains the hegemonic political machine. But the economic and political situation of 2023 is comparable with that of 2002, faced with a deepening economic crisis and acquisition of black sliding democracy and freedoms. There has been widespread resentment against his wrong reason. The opposition united to capitalize on this anger and managed to deny his a first round victory on May 14th. But in Sunday's runoff, he won 52.1% of the vote share against Kemal Kil, Kilch, Kilchridrago. Chirdago's as 47.9%. Mr. Daruglu has accepted the outcome but called the election process the most unfair in years. He has a point. Mr. Erdogan and his allies control the big media, shaping the information flow. State institutions, including the religious directorate, Diyanet, which controls mosques and appoints imams, amplified the AKP propaganda. The president accused the opposition of having ties with terrorists as a mainstream Kurdish party was backing his rival, Mr. Kil Kil Darglu, a former bureaucrat from the minority Alevi community, led a spirited campaign but failed to overcome the AKP's Islamist populism. Mr. Erdogan, arguably the most powerful Turkish leader since Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, has reshaped the country's polity and society over the past 20 years. Kemal Atatürk Kemal Atatürk, who abolished the Ottoman Caliphate and Turkey, secularized Turkey, saw the clergy as a threat to his vision for the country. Tensions between Kemalism and Islamism has always been there in Turkey's modern history, but until Mr. Erdogan's rise to power, no Islamist leader has managed to upend the system. While doing so, he amassed powers, rewrote the constitution, turning it into an execution presidency, got him elected as the all-powerful president. Uh, is stifled dissent, stepped up the war against Kurdish rebel and jailed political rivals. Yet this election was his biggest challenge, and that he had to go into the second round with a lead of just 3 points should remind him that Turkish society remains polarized. The battered economy needs urgent attention. A new term is an opportunity for Mr. Erdogan, whose legacy has already been marred by his authoritarian tendencies and mismanagement of the economy, to right the wrongs and offer a new inclusive beginning. But it is unclear whether Turkey's Islamist leader is ready for such a change, a parliamentary democracy or an executive democracy. Even as the new parliament has been inaugurated, what is overlooked is the increasing subordination of parliament in India's parliamentary democracy. Gautam Bhatia is a Delhi based lawyer. Last week, a new parliament building was inaugurated with both fanfare and controversy in particular the execution of the president of India, the formal head of the executive from the inauguration, and the symbolism around the symbol, a scepter, originally used to signify the transfer of power between Chola rulers, generated significant debate. Submerged beneath this debate, however, is an overlooked fact: the increasing subordination of the parliament in India's parliamentary democracy. Parts of this story are familiar. We know that bills are passed with minimal or no deliberation. We know that parliament sits for fewer and fewer days in a year. A parliament and parliamentary sessions are often adjourned. We know that presidential ordinance have become a parallel, if not dominant form of lawmaking by constitutional design. It is tempting to attribute all of this to uncir- unscrupulous or callous politicians. What that misses, however, is the misunderstanding that the growing irrelevance of parliament is not because of individual actions but a matter of constitutional design. In other words, the Indian constitution, by its very structure, facilitate and enables the marginalization of parliament and the concentration of power within a dominant executive. How does this happen? Consider the various safeguards that parliamentary democracies generally tend to put in place against executive dominance or abuse. First, in order to enact this agenda, the executive must command a majority in parliament. This opens up the space for intra-party dissent and the important role for ruling party parliamentarians who are not members of the cabinet to exercise a check over the executive. Occasionally, ruling party backbenchers can even join forces with the opposition to defeat unpopular bills, as was the case with various Brexit deals in the UK House of Commons between 2017 and 2019. Second, the opposition itself is granted certain rights in Parliament and certain limited control over parliamentary proceedings in order to publicly hold the executive to account. Third, the interest of Parliament against the executive are meant to be represented by the Speaker, a neutral and independent authority. And fourth, certain parliamentary democracies embrace bicameralism, a second upper house that acts as a reviving chamber where interests other than those of the brute majority as represented in of our case. This is the Rajya Sabha acting as a council of states. When these features function as it becomes very difficult for the executive to ride roughshod over parliament, and in turn opens up space for parliament to act as a deliberative and representative body that it is meant to be, a dilution eraser. In India, however, each of these features has been diluted or erased over the years. First, the possibility of intra-party dissent with parliament has been stamped out by virtue of the 10th schedule of the constitution, popularly known as the anti-defection law, introduced through the constitutional amendment in 1985. The 10th schedule penalized disobedience of the party with disqualification from the House altogether. Ironically, as recent events have more than amply demonstrated, the 10th schedule has failed to fulfill the purpose for which it has enacted, to curb horse trading and unprincipled floor crossing. What it has done, however, is to strengthen the hand of the party leadership, which in the case of the ruling party is effectively the cabinet executive against its own parliamentarians. Intra-party dissent is far more difficult when the price is a disqualification from parliament. Second, right from its inception, the Indian constitution did not carve out any specific space for the political opposition in the House. There is no equivalent, for example, of prime minister's question, where the prime minister has to face direct questioning of their record from the leader of the opposition as well as by other politicians. In other words, the manner of proceedings in parliament are under the complete control of the executive, with no real constitutional checks upon how the control is exercised. Third, this is exacerbated by the fact that the speaker in our system is not independent. The speaker is not required to give up membership of their political party and is not constitutionally obliged to act impartially. This has led to an increasing trend at both the central and the state level of speakers acting in a bluntly partisan manner in order to advance the interest of the executive over the interest of the house. Not only does this affect the quality of the deliberations in the lower house, as the speaker has control over the conduct of the house, but it has also a knock-on effect on the upper house, as has been seen of late. When the ruling party wishes to avoid effective scrutiny in the Rajya Sabha over bills, the Speaker simply clarifies the bills as a money bill, thus depriving the Rajya Sabha of the right to make amendments. This was seen most vividly in the case of the Aadhaar Act, where Rajya Sabha scrutiny was avoided in this precise manner, and many important rights protecting amendments could not be passed. A role of the upper house. Fourth, the role of the upper house is undercut not only by the speaker's misclassification of bills, but also by the constitutionally sanctioned ordinance making power. An ordinance is nothing more than executive legislation, and while in theory it is meant to be used only for an emergency, while parliament is not in session, in practice it is used as a parallel process of lawmaking, especially when the executive wants to bypass the upper house altogether, at least for a period of time, and create a fait accompli. When we put all of this together, when emerges is a picture where the only effective check upon the executive is one where the electorate has thrown up a fractured mandate, and the ruling party is pushed to govern in a coalition with allies with whom it does not always see eye to eye. In such scenario, coalition partners can exercise something of a check upon the executive in parliament. However, when there is a single majority ruling party, whether at the center center or in the state, there is very little that parliament can do. The anti-defection law wipes out intra-party dissent. The political opposition's scope for participation depends upon the discretion of the executive. Partisan speakers further ensure that the executive is insulated from public embracement at the hands of the opposition by controlling the debate, and the upper house is taken out of the equation either by the misclassification of money bills or by the use of ordinance power. It is no wonder that the quality of parliamentary deliberations has declined. It is simply a mirror of parliament's own structural marginalization under the constitution. Instead, what we have is greater and a greater executive power, a situation that resembles presidential systems with strong executives but without the checks and balances and veto points that those systems have. In effect, the worst of all worlds. Therefore, even as the new parliament is inaugurated, the urgent question that we must ask is whether, in formal terms, India can contribute to be called a parliamentary democracy, or whether we have gradually morphed into an executive democracy. And if indeed we want to return to parliamentarism, what manner of constitutional changes and reform that it would require. Thank you.